Welcome to this Navi screencast on the sixth chapter of Sefer Yehoshua, which discusses the Jewish people's conquest of Yericho. After lots of anticipation, the Jewish people are finally ready to start conquering some land and making Eretz Yisrael their own. They begin traveling from that red area towards the bottom right-hand portion of this map in a northwestern direction towards Yericho, which is located opposite the Yarden River, in orange with that black circle around it. Of course, we had an opportunity to discuss some of the ways in which the Jewish people's crossing of the Yarden under Yehoshua was similar and different from the way Moshe led the Jewish people across the Yam Suf. While there were some definite similarities, there were also some significant differences. But once they cross into Yericho, the ending of the story takes on somewhat of a miraculous twist. The Jewish people do something that is never repeated in their history, and that is bringing down the walls of the city with only their shofarot. But before we discuss that episode in a little more detail, let's take a look at some of the high points of the Perek. Hashem tells Yehoshua to prepare the nation to conquer Yericho. Of course, anytime the Jewish people are getting ready to do battle, they need to assemble in a military formation. And so Yehoshua prepares them for this by putting them in a military formation that looks something like this. According to the Navi, at the front of the formation were the tribes of Reuven, Gad, and half of the tribe of Manasseh. You'll recall that those were the tribes that had asked Moshe years before, during Moshe's lifetime, to not actually settle in the land of Eretz Yisrael, but to remain on the other side of the Yarden River, the side from which the Jews just crossed. Moshe agreed under one condition, that they help the Jewish people, in fact, even lead the Jewish people in battle to settle and to conquer all of the land, and then, if they still wanted to go back and return to the portion of the land on the other side of the Yarden. So here they are in the front of the formation, fulfilling their promise. Behind them are 7 Kohanim, each with a shofar, so 7 shofarot, and then behind them, the Aron Kodesh carried by the Kohanim. Remember, of course, that the Aron contained the luchot, the complete luchot, as well as the remains, the shattered remains of the first set of luchot that were broken by Moshe, and following them in the rear were the rest of the people, some of whom had their own shofarot as well. Let's take a moment and stop to think about some of the things we've begun to learn. Why don't you pause this video and answer the following question. Were the luchot held inside of the Aron? If you answered that they were, you are correct. Let's try one more question. If you said that the Aron was made of silver, unfortunately, that's not correct. The Aron was, of course, made of gold. It wasn't only made of gold. The outer portion of the Aron was certainly gold. The inner portion of the Aron was gold, but the middle portion was made of wood. How do you do that? Well, the Aron was actually 3 parts in one. The outer part, one box made of gold, and a second box inside of that made of wood, and a third box inside of that covered in gold, so that the Aron would appear to be covered in gold both in and out. Let's try one more question and then move on to the next points of the Perek. So if you answered that others possessed shofarot, you are correct. It wasn't just the Kohanim. Remember that there were some members of Bnei Yisrael in the back of the formation that also had shofarot as well. Now, with this military formation in place, the Jewish people circled the city of Yericho, which was a walled city, which was a sign of its strength and fortification, for 6 days. So for 6 days, this formation would circle the city, blowing their shofarot during that procession. But on the 7th day, something different happened. The Jewish people circled the city 7 times, each time blowing a shofar, so that it might have looked something like this. These formations and these circlings of the city began on Sunday, according to the Navi, and so on Sunday they would circle it once, blowing their shofarot. And again on Monday, they would do the same thing, circle it, blow the shofar. And this would repeat on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, and again on Friday for a total of 6 circlings of the city, each time with the shofar being blown. But on Shabbat, on the seventh day of the siege around Yericho, the Jewish people circled the city 7 times, and the Kohanim blow their shofarot on each of those 7 formations. At the end of the 7th circle, something incredible, something never before seen occurs, and that is that the walls of Yericho come tumbling down. The Jewish people have to do nothing other than to enter the city. There's nothing stopping them from conquering the city and all of its inhabitants. They capture all of the people. They burn the city down. Yehoshua makes them take a pledge that no one ever rebuild the city. And finally, all of the spoils of the city, all of its gold, silver, and possessions are collected. But Yehoshua says that no one is allowed to take any of those spoils of war. We'll be focusing on that ban, not to take the spoils, some more in class. But as we consider all of these events in the Perek, there are 3 questions that I'd like you to think about in preparation for the discussion groups that we're going to do in class the next time we meet up. First thing has to do with these spoils. I thought winners get to claim spoils of war. Isn't that their right? I mean, if you beat someone in battle, you're entitled to take anything that's theirs. That's just one of the laws of military encounters. So why weren't the Jews allowed to take the spoils from Yericho? Why did Yehoshua put a ban on them? Second question that I'd like us to think about is, why did the Jews need a miracle to conquer Yericho? This kind of miracle did not happen in any other battle that they would undertake to conquer the land. So what was so unique about Yericho that they needed a miracle to bring the walls down? Why couldn't they simply fight? They were set up to fight. They certainly had an army ready to fight. In the past, the Jews have fought their enemies. So what is so unique about Yericho that it needed to happen by means of a miracle? And finally, why were the Jews allowed to fight on Shabbat? And how come they were allowed to blow the shofar? Don't we remember from recent Rosh Hashanah that we did not blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah when it fell on Shabbat? This is one of the laws of Shabbat, that you're not allowed to blow the shofar or use any other instruments for various reasons, which we may discuss in class. So 3 questions I'd like us to think about over here. Why weren't the Jews allowed to take its spoils? Why did the Jews need a miracle to conquer Yericho? And why were the Jews allowed to blow a shofar and fight on Shabbat? These are some questions that we'll discuss together when we get back together in class and go into some of these issues in a little more detail. For now, thanks for watching this flipped lesson on the 6th chapter of Sefer Yehoshua, and I'm looking forward to continuing the discussion and the learning with you when we get back together real soon.